Nick Maravets, Locked On Cyclones, where he talks about Iowa State. Speaking of, Iowa State and BYU were 15 and 16. At least that's where they sit as the transfer portal comes to a close in college football this second spring window. How you say not good. You don't necessarily, strive to be last in that category overall as this thing closes. That's combining per 24/7 the open window in the winter and now the spring one. But I hear a lot of the arguments from Iowa State fans and BYU fans. Hey, ever heard of the word continuity? A lot of players coming back. You don't need a ton of new players. The ones you got were key in positions that you can plug and play where you actually needed them. And outside of that, don't touch anything. Don't change anything. We're good. Is it a good thing that Iowa State and BYU are last in this conference in the transfer portal?
Well, let me ask you this before I dive in here. Where would you say Iowa State is weakest on their roster right now?
I'm going to go with wide receiver. You're going to need a couple wide receivers because you lost two guys who were top 3-4 round NFL draft picks, right? Yeah.
Yep. Well, we got those in the first transfer portal. So Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend out of East Carolina, and I believe UCF is where Xavier Townsend came from. So we've kind of got that base covered. Then outside of that, Iowa State is.
Tell me, did you get any new offensive linemen? You could probably use a couple tackles, maybe.
We've brought some linemen in this portal
so
from IU.
You're telling me the holes there have been plugged.
Minor holes for Iowa State, and Iowa State immediately just boom, bam, pow. All of a sudden, we are squeaky clean. I love this roster, and I've talked to some people, and there's conversations of, well, this team might not be as good as last year. I was absolutely shocked to hear that. Like, legitimately, I think this team is bar none, bare minimum, a Big 12 title contender because of the injuries it had last year. Iowa State is being overlooked because, we're not bringing in that many guys and whatever. We don't need to. We had, 6-7 guys in the linebacker position who were hurt last year. Tight end was banged up as well. We lost some wide receivers, but we brought in basically duplications of the two we lost in Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend. Very similar builds. Obviously, they are their own people. I get that as well. But we're going to fill that hole. Running back, we didn't lose anybody. We're only getting older there. Rocco replacing the same spot that he obviously was in last year. It's the same dude, so we know what we're getting there. I am not concerned about this roster at all. And to be completely honest, with where we sit with roster limitations, what's that going to look like? I don't hate the lack of additions for Iowa State because it seems like this roster is already set. We're at linebacker, we might be 10 deep. Would you like us to add a linebacker? I don't think we could even take it.
I don't know if I want you to add linebacker, please. It's fine. There's enough linebackers. You've made your point is made at that position. And for BYU, I know that Jake Hatch can't speak for them here, but hey, we need a defensive lineman. Okay, Keanu Tanavasa and the Purcell kid come in. Hey, we kind of need a tight end. Carson Ryan comes in. Maybe a new linebacker, Max Alford. So you're not even replacing necessarily. I know that Iowa State's lost a couple to the portal. BYU's lost a couple to the portal. You're not exactly replacing guys on the roster you needed to. You're plugging and playing where it's necessary. And if it helps anybody, you're going to hear this. I think there'll be some Big 12 fans, whether it's a Cincinnati fan or UCF fan or a Utah fan, saying, "Oh, how could you ever spin it in a positive way that a team was last in the Big 12 in the transfer portal?" Can I ask you this, Nick? Per 24/7. These four teams are the bottom four teams in the Big 12 in transfer portal rankings in 2025. Arizona State, Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU. What do they all have in common?
They're good at football.
They're good at football. They're kind of good at the whole culture and football thing. So it's not just of course, he's picking out a couple of schools and trying to make them look good. No! The good teams, the best teams in this league, the championship contenders from last year aren't exactly going portal crazy.
Well, and another point, too, I was going to make this in the first segment, but I feel like it's applicable here as well. I took a look at everyone that went to the NFL from Iowa State last year. Not only the 4 that were drafted, but the 5 that went as free agents as well. The average time spent at Iowa State, can you guess how many years it was?
It's got to be pushing 4. Please tell me.
It's 4. It is 4. That's the average undergraduate degree length. That's how long they were here on average. Now you're going to have a few guys that came in for 1 or 2, but we also had a few guys that were here for 5 or 6. So that averages out. I think that right there, you're going to see that continuity factor, right? So could we have maybe brought in a guy at DB, like, in my opinion, one of the weaker spots for Iowa State? Maybe. I suppose if you were to plug and play and get rid of a few, maybe that would work. But I mean, we've seen in the past just how valuable it is to stay at not only not only Iowa State, but at other Big 12 programs for years on end, and to develop into those top tier players. Darian Porter started as a wide receiver before getting picked 68 overall to the Raiders as a defensive back. The development is very prominent, not only at Iowa State, but across the Big 12.
I think so. And to that point, Nick, this is a conference where those 4 years are even more impressive, whether it's Iowa State or Kansas State, that I think would be similar, or BYU would be similar. It's even more impressive when you think that includes adding guys in. You think about that 4 years like, oh, well, if a guy leaves after 3 years and that hurts your 4 years. Yeah, but it also hurts you if you sign a fifth-year senior. It hurts if you sign a grad student. It means that not only are the Iowa States of the world not losing guys to the portal, they're not really bringing them in. Matt Campbell is going over to West Des Moines and saying, hey, I know you're a 3-star, want to play left tackle for Iowa State, and we develop you into a Big 12 championship, college football playoff caliber player. And that's what these athletes are doing. They're going from relatively unheard of, low-rated players out of high school to being developed by some of the best developers in the nation, like a Matt Campbell. Ryan Day is not a developer. Ohio State is not taking athletes and flipping them into great young men who go into the world and are successful. That's what you're going to find at a Baylor, at even an Oklahoma State, who I'll kind of rag on here in a second, or now a Kansas, or the aforementioned Arizona State, Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU. Here's another point that I think backs this up. If you are a fan of Houston, 25 transfer portal guys. Oklahoma State, 36. West Virginia, 40. UCF, 36. Some of the teams who are on the lower half of the Big 12, that's where they're trying to compensate or overcompensate, is bringing in new guys. And guess what? I commend you. A lot of you kind of sucked last season. Teams that had high expectations weren't good. Like, hey, these guys on our roster aren't good enough to play in the Big 12, aren't good enough to win in the Big 12. We need to overhaul. At that point, it makes a lot more sense in my brain that these schools would do that, these coaches would do that. Those are the teams that need transfer portal commits. Arizona, on the other hand, Cincinnati, who are both sitting kind of teetering outside the top 10 in the Big 12 in transfer portal rankings, you need to be top 5 in this. You need to revamp your roster, and they haven't done it. Those are the schools that were bad last year. They need better athletes. They haven't done that at a high level. I think those two schools will suffer because of that next season. Arizona and Cincinnati, probably 2 of the bottom 3 or 4 teams in this conference, at least in 2025. Coming up, Sacramento State to the Big 12. Sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? What if I told you I'm a bit of a Nostradamus on this one on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network with Locked On Cyclones, your team every day.